If one day you hear someone calling your name in the dark, don't answer. Because that's exactly how the most disturbing case ever recorded in African history began. The mass disappearance of the village of Ukombe. No fight, no screams, no bodies. An entire village vanished in a single night. And the most terrifying part? They walked out on their own. Not for money, not for power, not for faith, but for something far darker. Something no amount of fortune, influence, or belief could ever protect anyone from. This story isn't folklore. It was investigated, documented, filed, and eventually covered up. But now, you're going to hear everything. Ukombe used to be a simple village, isolated but full of life. Children ran through the red dust at sunset. Laughter echoed with the smell of burning wood. The elders told ancient tales, and there was always music, rituals, and celebration. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where every name was spoken with affection. And then, suddenly, silence arrived. First, the birds disappeared. Then, the wind stopped. The temperature dropped without explanation. And slowly, the feeling that something invisible was moving through the village began to grow, as if the ground itself was being watched by something that should never have been there. The first to notice was Nalia, the elder, a woman who rarely spoke. But that night, she walked to the edge of the forest, stared into the darkness, and whispered, "They are coming, and now they know our names." No one understood. Not until the children started screaming at nightfall. They refused to go inside. They said someone was calling from outside, calling each of them by name. But the doors were locked, the streets were empty, and no one was there. At least, no one visible. The first official testimony came from Bakari. He woke up at 3:08 a.m. to a freezing breath against his face. When he opened his eyes in the darkness, he saw no one, but felt cold hands on his shoulder, as if someone was measuring his height. When he lit his lantern, every dog in the village began to howl at the same time, all staring toward the forest, as if something was waiting inside it. The next morning, something unprecedented happened. The dogs refused to enter the village, even the aggressive ones, as if the animals knew something the people didn't. The following night, terror became sound. People heard voices calling, some outside their homes, some inside their homes, and some inside their own heads. Every voice called a name. "Come, it's me. The door is unlocked. You're safe here. Why are you ignoring me?" And every voice belonged to the same person, someone who was already dead. A mother heard her deceased son singing the same lullaby he used to sing before falling asleep. She almost opened the door. She only didn't because she fainted from crying. When they closed their eyes, the images came. Eyeless figures watching through the cracks in the walls. Shadows circling houses like predators. Shapes trying to imitate human movements, as if they were learning how to be people. The villagers prayed, sang, burned incense, performed protection rituals, but nothing changed. At 2:47 a.m. on the third night, it started. 3 knocks, always 3. Always the same interval. They weren't loud, they weren't violent, they were calm. Too calm. As if whoever was knocking knew no one could resist forever. After the knocks, the voices returned. But now, they called each person by name with terrifying precision. They knew dates, memories, guilt, secrets, trauma. They knew the emotional history of everyone. When someone opened the door, no one screamed, no one ran, no one fought. They just walked outside, following the call. When the sun rose, the village was perfect. Fires still burning, food still warm, chairs pulled out as if people were about to return. But no one came back. No traces, no footprints, no bodies. It became the first mass disappearance in history with 0 physical evidence. Days later, 3 survivors were found in the forest: Kafu, Zuri, and Malaika. They were shaking, dehydrated, covered in dirt, traumatized. When they finally spoke, they all said the same sentence. They called everyone by name. They asked who they were. Kafu replied, "What was here, before us?" Zuri added, "They never wanted to come inside. They wanted to lure us out." Malaika finished, "They're still calling." The 3 showed identical symptoms: extreme fear of their own names, fear of doors, refusal to sleep after 2 a.m., violent reaction to knocking sounds. They were isolated, examined, and then disappeared from historical records. But that wasn't the end. Because much later, an investigator found something that was never meant to be opened. A document, accompanied by an old tape recorder. On the paper, a handwritten warning. If you press play, don't stop halfway. Experts believe the tape was the final recording of Kafu. When they pressed the button, it didn't start with a voice. It started with 3 knocks. Slow, rhythmic, almost polite, as if someone was asking permission to come in. After 4 seconds of absolute silence, Kafu speaks. Not with the voice of a normal man, but with the voice of someone who has already given up being human. If you're hearing this, then they're still calling. An investigator knocked over his chair in panic. The noise is recorded on the tape. Kafu breathes heavily, as if every memory is a blade. On the first night, they just watched from outside the houses. Silence. On the second night, they started calling. An analyst asks, "Calling who?" Kafu answers without hesitation, "Calling each of us by name." He continues, "They used the voices of the people we loved, voices of the dead. My name came out of my mother's mouth, and she'd been buried for 10 years. An investigator, what did they want? The answer made the government shut down the investigation immediately. The village was never ours. We were the ones living where they've always been. Then, the moment that froze everyone in the room. 3 knocks directly behind the microphone. No one was outside. No one came in. But the knocks were there. Kafu panics, screams so desperately that the audio distorts. "You think you're hearing a story, but they're already hearing you. They know the name of whoever is listening. They know where you are. They know when you go to sleep. At the end of the tape, a voice, soft, gentle, whispers the full name of the lead investigator. The recording cuts. Silence. Days later, Cafu disappeared. No body, no trace. Zuri and Malaika too. Today, no one goes near the place where Ukombe once existed. The government erased the village from maps, fenced off the area, classified the land as a restricted preservation zone. But hunters, explorers, and travelers all report the same thing. At 3:14 a.m., 3 distant knocks, and a voice calling your name, even when you are completely alone. Some say the voice sounds like someone they loved. Others say it sounds like a stranger. But everyone describes the same feeling. A physical urge to open the door. A desperate need to answer. And they all repeat the same sentence. The hardest part isn't the fear. The hardest part is resisting. So, if one night, in complete silence, you hear someone calling your name, don't answer, don't look, don't investigate. Because some voices weren't meant to be heard. They were meant to be obeyed.